purpose of prohibition of things we spoke about earlier is that they protect us from things which are extremely harmful, which are harmful to the society as a whole. Whether we're able to understand where the harm lies or not, alcohol, the harm is obvious. The pig, the harm is not so obvious.
A British inner-city hospital. A deadly bacteria has been found in the umbilical cords of newborn babies. It's a superbug found in livestock, particularly pigs, and now it's infecting people.
The doctor was a little bit scared when I say I work in pig farm.
It can be caught by touching contaminated animals, people, or even meat. In an 18-month investigation, The Guardian has gone on the trail of where this new superbug is coming from. We've obtained undercover footage of British pig farms and exposed the conditions where bugs could be breeding. We've conducted independent tests to see whether our supermarkets are selling contaminated meat. Well, these results are pretty shocking. And we reveal how the superbug is already raging in the country supplying much of our pork.
It's an epidemic out of control.
It's a catastrophe because we don't even have the most basic knowledge of how widespread MRSA is.
This is the story of LA-MRSA CC398, the animal superbug, and why Britain could be on the brink of an epidemic. A Glasgow hospital. A strain of MRSA linked to livestock has been found in the umbilical cords of 2 newborn babies. This is not the hospital MRSA with which we're all familiar, but animal MRSA, the latest disturbing twist in the war we're losing against the superbug. Scientists who discovered it have no idea how it got there. All they know is that the bacteria has jumped species and is passed from animals to humans, and that in humans, LA-MRSA CC398 is resistant to many antibiotics modern medicine can throw at it. Commonly manifested in the skin, this strain of the animal superbug rarely kills people, but for some, the bug can cause serious and life-threatening infections, including pneumonia and blood poisoning. Its main victims are those who work with pigs.
I was filled up with many red spots with some liquid inside. Almost every single hair was infected.
Highly contagious, the superbug can be caught by touching contaminated animals or people.
You have contact with people, you shake hands with people. People carry the organism in their nostrils, in their throat, on their hands. The problem with MRSA is actually that the transmission takes place in the community.
Many people carry the bacteria without ever becoming ill. The danger is that they can not only infect others, but the superbug can attack them when their own immune systems are low. Although cooking destroys the bacteria, animal MRSA can be caught by handling contaminated raw meat, then touching inside the nostrils or the mouth or a cut. In a major investigation, The Guardian set out to find how this superbug is spreading from pig farms to our meat and to our babies. We like to think that our animals are reared in the fresh air, with natural weaning and minimal medication. But our insatiable demand for cheap meat has given rise to a different kind of farming altogether. This is the reality of how some cheap meat is produced. This man has worked on factory farms across Britain for 15 years and has filmed the secretive world of industrial livestock farms.
I think if the general public were to see, exactly how some of these farms are operating, they would be really shocked. Factory farming of pigs is just horrendous, This
first pig here is dead. That one doesn't look too well.
Packed together, often in unsanitary conditions, factory farmed livestock are prone to illness, and diseases spread quickly. To combat this, many are given antibiotics, either when sick or to prevent illness.
We get cheap food because we can treat endemic disease with antibiotics. We are dependent upon the use of antibiotics to cope with these increased levels of disease.
In fact, Nearly half of all antibiotics used in the West are not given to people, but to farm animals. To keep production lines tight and meat cheap for consumers, intensively farmed piglets are weaned early so that sows can be impregnated again quickly. But the stress of early weaning can weaken their immune systems and cause diseases which are treated with antibiotics. Although the use of antibiotics as growth promoters to fatten pigs up has been outlawed in the UK, they're still routinely used, sometimes without proper veterinary oversight.
Drugs that are used in today's factory farm animals has absolutely shocked me. The scale of it is astronomical.
And we have evidence that the antibiotics being used on some farms include those classified as critical in treating human diseases. Experts warn that using them on animals risks rendering them useless in human medicine. These powerful antibiotics can be bought by anyone, anywhere, at the click of a mouse. These are drugs that are only supposed to be prescribed by a vet in the UK. Yet, as our investigation proved, we received enough drugs to treat an entire pig herd, around 75 animals. This abuse and overuse of antibiotics means many bacteria found in pigs have built up a resistance to the drugs, which in turn has given rise to superbugs like livestock-associated MRSA.
This particular type of MRSA is clearly now well established in the UK farms.
Despite the growing alarm around this strain of MRSA, the government does not routinely test for the superbug, either in our farms or in our meat. So The Guardian conducted our own independent tests on 100 pork products bought from 4 major supermarkets. This will be the first time, as far as we're aware, that meat from supermarkets like this has been tested in this way. Before we do these tests, we have no idea which of these products, if any, may contain MRSA or not. The samples were sent by specialist courier to the Technical University of Denmark for analysis. It would take several weeks for the results to come back. Denmark is Europe's largest pork producer and one of the main suppliers of pork to Britain.
Danish bacon, yummy, 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 yum.
Danish bacon has long enjoyed a prominent position in Britain and is marketed as a cut above the rest.
But that's not Danish.
But the pig industry in Denmark is in the grip of a growing epidemic.
We're not only the world leading exporters of pigs, we also export MRSA.
An estimated 2/3 of Danish piggeries are contaminated with the superbug, and cases have tripled in the last 5 years.
It's an epidemic out of control in Denmark.
Unlike Britain, the Danish government has been testing for the superbug. According to official figures, as many as 12,000 people are infected, and it's hitting the headlines.
I august blev rekordmange danskere smittet, 127 registreret i alt på bare 1 måned. Og eksperterne kalder nu situationen for en epidemi ude af kontrol.
Many farm workers are contaminated.
I visited the doctor. They said I have MRSA.
I was to the doctor because I have some spot on the face. The doctor was a little bit scared when I say I work in pig farm.
The doctor told me for 8 months to take antibiotics. But if I stop also with the medicine, I will be filled up again on my scalp. I lose a lot of hair.
Despite an 8-month course of drugs, the disease shows no sign of abating.
And also I get many very big spots, like here on my neck, you see.
In Denmark, they say that we are talking about 60, maybe 70% of the workers have this infection.
Kenneth Sorensen was a pig farmer for 12 years before turning whistleblower. He and his wife tested positive for livestock-associated MRSA.
I was a little bit in a shock, so I was a little bit, what's this? This is a new thing, what is it? We was not so worried in the beginning, but we was thinking about it.
Doctors reassured Kenneth there was no problem.
it was really downplayed, and I can see that now when I think about it.
For Kenneth and his partner Carmelia, problems really started at the birth of their first child, after the hospital found out the couple were infected with the superbug.
Weather was a big sign, isolated.
The nurses put on a mask and cover to protect their body against this bacteria. They always said, but it's because we need to take care of the other patients that they don't get infected.
I have to wear an outfit and mask.
We was in isolation, and we had our own bathroom, and we had a small room where she needed to deliver in.
We couldn't leave the room, and if we had to, we also have to wash our hands, and we couldn't have visitors.
Then I asked, why do you need protection against me? That doesn't make any sense, that you tell me it's not a problem for me, but it's a problem for other patients.
This is a dramatic situation. It would be a disaster if such an organism is spread in hospital. We have to be careful.
It has cost me my job. I don't want to work with infected pigs anymore. Pigs who have MRSA. I want this bacteria to go away from my family.
In Britain, our chief medical officer insists that this superbug poses no major health threat.
A number of countries do have an issue with livestock-associated MRSA. It can live on the skin. It rarely causes skin infections. Livestock-associated MRSA causes very little problem for humans.
Last year we have uncovered that there are deaths in Denmark. At that time there were 3 deaths. Now the total number are 5 deaths.
Although many people who catch livestock-associated MRSA work with pigs, none of those who died had any connection with pig farms. They had weakened immune systems, and when they were colonized by MRSA, their infection did not respond to antibiotic treatment. Despite these deaths, the Danish pork industry has been accused of trying to hide how many farms are contaminated.
Our government has made the mistake from the beginning that they wanted to protect the farmers by silencing the whole problem and trying not to talk about it.
For nearly 5 years, investigative journalist Niels Mulvad has been fighting the pork industry for the right to publicise which farms are infected with MRSA.
If we have a list of all the breeding farms and we know which are infected, which are not infected, the authorities and the farmers are forced actually to try to clean up their production lines.
To stop the extent of the disease being revealed, the pig industry has attempted to silence Niels by prosecuting him using privacy laws as their weapon. Many farms simply refuse to be tested at all, and the government doesn't force them. Of the 10% of Danish farms that have been tested, over 2/3 were contaminated.
And then let's talk a moment about pork, ham, bacon, pepperoni. These are some of the things that the scripture tells us we should not eat. The ushers have already locked the doors. And of course, this has to do with anything that comes from a pig, a hog, a swine. And I know some of you love pork chops. You love ham and cheese sandwiches. I grew up on all that. I love bacon, but for our health's sake, we have to be willing to make some changes. God knows what's best for us. And back in the Bible days, the pig was considered unclean. It was never considered a source of food. And one of the main reasons why was the pig will eat anything. A pig eats waste and garbage. This is kind of gross, but a pig will eat its own dead child. A pig will eat other sick and infected animals. They're scavengers. And what's interesting is the pig has one of the quickest and poorest digestive systems of any animal. It takes only 4 hours, and that's not good. Because the digestive system is so quick and so poor, many times the toxins from the food are not properly eliminated, and they are stored in the pig's fat. That means that pig can eat all kinds of filth and garbage. It can eat other infection. 4 hours later, it's sent to the slaughter and butchered. In a few days, it's on your plate at home. You're having ribs. The problem is the toxins were never properly eliminated from the pig. On the other hand, the animals that God says are okay for us to eat, like cow, lamb, deer, buffalo, These animals eat fresh, clean vegetation. Their digestive system is much more sophisticated. In fact, a cow basically has 3 stomachs. And that fresh, clean vegetation is processed through a digestive system that takes 24 hours. Think about it, 24 hours versus 4 hours. Would you rather eat an animal that eats waste and filth, or an animal that eats fresh, clean vegetation? An animal that poorly processes the food and stores the toxins in its fat, or an animal that properly eliminates the toxin from its body? I don't know about you, but I don't want to take a chance.
We find in previous scriptures, in the Old Testament, for instance, the order for people not to eat pork. I remember in the 1950s, the people argued against it and said, oh, that was back then. They didn't have refrigeration. Now we have good refrigerators and freezers. And we know now that that's the problem, is that the meat just needs to be quickly refrigerated. And if we can just do that, then it'll be fine. In the late 1950s, they discovered it didn't work. There were other things coming out of this meat, and refrigeration didn't cure everything. 1960s, now we've got a new way to deal with it. We're going to put some chemicals in the meat. Late 1960s, whoops, that didn't work. Have to try something else. Since then, they've done what they call flash freeze. Freeze it, you know, and now that should work. But yet when they thaw it out, here comes a new set of bacteria or worms and things that they have to deal with. They've even gone to the extent of doing something with radiation treatment. Can you imagine making the pig radioactive? Can you imagine glow-in-the-dark pig meat? I don't know. But this is the kind of condition that we're in when people just don't seem to want to catch on. You were told by your Creator. You were told by the one who made you and I and the pig. He made us, and he told us what to do. Now, of course, we have this in Islam as well. In the Qur'an, there's the clear order for the believers to stay away from the laham khanzir. Laham is flesh, khanzir means pig meat. And then somebody might say, well, okay, but that's just the flesh. We could eat the skin maybe, or we could maybe, eat the feet of him. They boil the pig's feet. Or maybe we could eat his ears, maybe because there's no flesh in the ear. And they start with all these arguments, and you think, are you crazy? What is the matter with you? Haven't you understood? Here, you have an order from your Creator, the one who manufactured us, okay? He's giving you clear instruction. Here's your book. Here's the owner's manual. Don't do it. And you're trying to find ways around it. What about alcohol? Again, for centuries we've been told, don't consume alcohol. It says in the Quran, more or less the meaning of it is that there are benefits, okay, but there's damage, and the damage far outweighs any benefit you're ever going to get out of the alcohol. So leave it. Do not drink it. Don't drink alcohol. Today they can show you scientifically, well, the chemical reaction inside the human being, the dependency on alcohol, there is something that's addictive within there, and some people are unable to get away from the addiction when they get into alcohol.
Alcohol, the harm is obvious. The pig, the harm is not so obvious. The harm is not so obvious in the pig. But we believe there is major harm. Not just a bit of harm, but major harm in the pig. Otherwise, Allah is not going to prohibit it. He is not desirous of creating difficulties in life to keep us away from things which are beneficial. No. He prohibits the things which are harmful, where the harm is widespread. So when he prohibited the pig, it's because there's real harm in it. Not just the trichinosis that we have discovered, or the fact that the pig has a lot of fat and the body cannot break down pig fat, though it can break down cow fat and sheep fat and the others, but the pig fat, we don't have the enzymes to break it down to its lowest components, so it is redeposited in our system, in our blood vessels and things like this, and doctors recommend to stay from it if you have, problems with clogging of the arteries, all these type of things. We can see all that, but people can always say to you, what if we raise a hygienic pig? No trichinosis. And a lean pig, we don't feed him any, stuff that's going to make him fat. He's just bones and muscle. Are you going to eat him now? No. We still don't eat him. And anybody who has observed the pig, go to a pig farm and observe the pig. Its nature is filthy. It just loves filth. You put him in a clean area, he will wallow in his own feces, and yes, that is the nature of the pig. However you try to keep him, he loves filth. So, as they say, you are what you eat. There's a famous German nutritionist, he started that statement, you are what you eat. That's the bottom line. You're eating the pig, you're building yourself up with the pig, his enzymes, his protein, his, genes. Your body's breaking it down and remaking itself. It is affecting you. It is affecting you. Allah knows. This could very well be the essence of it. Now some people say, hey, the pig, why did Allah make the pig then? And of course, Muslims, people who are raised as Muslims, who have lived lives as practicing Muslims, who have never eaten the pig, in their mind, the pig must be nasty tasting. Well, to be honest, I was raised a non-Muslim, and my parents used to cook up pork, and it tasted good. It didn't taste bad, it tasted nice, and that's why it's popular. So it's not about it being nasty tasting. No, not at all. So the people ask, well then why did Allah forbid it? If we discount this other element, right, of you being what you eat and all the other things, right? We say, hey, observe the pig. The pig is a garbage disposal unit, a living one. You got garbage, filth, whatever, the pigs go, they clean it up for you. So, that's his job, that's his role. And you don't have to eat everything Allah made. Do we eat flies? People could argue, why don't we eat the fly? We don't have to eat the fly. He has a job, he does his job, he's very important. Some kids ask, why did Allah make the fly? It's so nasty. Well, the fly has an important role. If we didn't have flies that lay their eggs in animal matter, and then the maggots come out and chew it up and break it down, we would be up to our necks in carcasses and things like that, because it won't break down without them. They play a major role in keeping our societies clean. They have a role. We don't go eating them. We don't have to eat them. We see what their job is, and common sense tells us we don't have to eat it. We don't eat it. Technically speaking, if you wanted to eat a fly, nobody could say it's haram. You realize that, right? I'll just clarify that in case you wanted to people who eat flies, right? I'm saying technically speaking, though I wouldn't want to eat it and I wouldn't recommend it, if you did choose to eat flies, it's halal. But we don't eat it. Okay?